Millennials of Reddit, what's the stupidest problem with your generation is you have ever heard? Somewhat related, my wife went to a generational differences seminar aimed at some PC sounding crap, where they discussed basically how to coexist with your co-workers decades older or younger than you to work effectively. The presenter read an article and it said the current workforce fears the incoming generation will enter the workforce feeling entitled, demanding a higher wage, with a work-life balance. The presenter then went on to ask, can anyone guess which generation they were referring to? Pretty much the entire room said millennials with much disdain. The presenter corrected them and said, actually the article I just read was from 1948. Turns out people will always hate the incoming generation. Forever. Guaranteed. When I did tech support for one of Australia's largest ISPs, in escalations, they only got to me if they actually had a legit problem, and not just forgot to turn the freaking computer on. I interacted with literally thousands of customers across a range of demographics, shown on their profile by age, as a form of identification, and distinct age-based patterns began to emerge. Once you had resolved the issue, the different generations would typically respond like so. 1. The greatest generation. Oh, thank you so much for your time and patience with a silly old duffer like me. I really can't keep up with all this technology. 2. Baby boomers. About freaking time. Now what am I getting in compensation for this inconvenience? I want you to put me through to complaints manager. 3. Gen X. There we go. Back online. That's great. Have a good one. 4. Millennials. Oh thank God. Thanks for getting it working. So how much do I have to pay for this fix? Nothing? Seriously dang. Thanks. The accuracy here made me shudder. The problem with your generation is, you kids don't know how to get in trouble anymore. When I was your age we'd have someone buy us beer and we'd sneak off to the woods or the lake and have a good time. But someone always got caught, of course. Then you'd get grounded and have no TV for a week. Kids just don't do that anymore. I'm okay, but I'm 30. My dad has told me so many stories of the stupid crap he and his buddies did in high school. All I could think was, man, if I did that I'd get arrested, convicted of something ridiculous, and would never have been able to get half the jobs I've worked. One I heard from a Vietnam vet was that we never had a mandatory military draft to weed out the weak ones and the whiners, and that a war would do us millennials all a little good. I was talking to my boss about HQ and the $50,000 prize they were giving out, and he was saying how he'd go on a grand vacation and buy a big shiny car if he won. I told him I'd pay off my school and car loans and start a savings account. He laughed and proceeded to make fun of stupid millennials for not knowing how to handle money. That we don't buy silver flatware because we're too lazy to polish it, don't want to buy the stupid knickknacks that their parents bought, etc. I work in the antiques field, so I hear that a lot. They always quote that statistic that we want to spend our money on experiences rather than things, and I fail to see how that is a bad thing. Now maybe I am lazy, but the idea of spending more money on something that requires more attention and upkeep but doesn't actually do its job any better is just, well, dumb. I'm not gonna buy myself more fruitless work to do. I was walking down the hallway at work and overheard the thing with millennials is they come and go whenever they want. How are we supposed to schedule a meeting when they refuse to have set hours? As a millennial, I still work 8-5 like everyone else in the office. It was oddly specific, but generally incorrect. Maybe he was talking about an intern that's still in school? Well, not quite answering the question. My friend's grandma made a comment yesterday about how millennials don't have china because we can't put it in the dishwasher and we don't like to hand wash dishes. I made a comment under my breath about how it's because china is expensive and not worth splurging on. Or my boss, who made a comment about how millennials don't care about money. I've been looking for a new job since. The goddamn participation trophies. We didn't ask for them. That was our parents' idea, and yet somehow that makes it our fault for doing entitled, irrational things like wanting to be able to buy a home with a middle-class income. Here's a thing that we insisted you get, that you probably don't even want, and we're going to blame you for getting, for the rest of your life. Baby boomers. That we're killing the chain restaurant industry. My boyfriend and I don't eat out that much, so if we are going to spend the money to sit down somewhere and eat, we want to go somewhere that has good, original food. Also, isn't it the industry's fault for not keeping up with their new market? Millennials think the world owes them something and are always expecting a handout. I work in social media for a food company. The only people who message and email us asking for free samples and products are firmly age 40 plus. Yep, anyone who's worked customer service knows the most likely culprit to be an entitled irrational human being is someone who's elderly or middle-aged. Millennials aren't having enough children or consuming enough? Really? I thought we would have freaking been happy about the sloughing of population grown in materialism. Well, we are. They don't have to be. Their happiness isn't my responsibility, and I don't need their approval. I just had this discussion with my sister this weekend. She said millennials act entitled. She didn't realize we are millennials. A lot of baby boomers seem to think a lot of things are our fault. Never mind that they've been the primary voting bloc for as long as we've been alive and then some. My dad has blamed me for voting away all our rights since before I could vote. My dad has told me before I'm not working enough and that my job's at real. I have 2 real jobs that are paying me real money. My oldest brother also has 2 jobs that pays him significantly less, but I have never heard him harp on him. My mom has this weird attitude that just because my work involves being in front of a computer all day somehow means that it's not a real job. Like, geez, just because you chose a line of work that requires you to be on your feet for at least half the day doesn't mean that people don't do pure mental work while sitting down. Anything that assumes millennials are still children, young teenagers. Millennials and their obsession with free healthcare. Back in my day, we just died. Sounds great actually. Tuition is just as expensive. Not a millennial but Toys R Us Bain Capital blaming their bankruptcy on millennials not having children is absurd. I'm a millennial with 2 kids. Some of their stuff is okay, the furniture mostly, but their prices are absurd. It's easier to buy something cheaper on Amazon. I'm always thoroughly annoyed by the millennials are lazy complaints that boomers have. I've been called lazy and a freeloader by so many people because I still live at home with my parents. What they fail to realize is that I'm neither. I live with my parents because I don't have a family of my own yet and my parents would be royally fricked if I wasn't living there. I make more than my father does. I pay rent. I own and pay the insurance for the car that gets me to work, my father to work, my brother to work, and until recently my sil to work. She lost her job. It also gets my mom back and forth to wherever she needs to go, groceries, etc., and was responsible for getting my grandmother to her doctor's appointments prior to her passing. I paid to replace the septic tank at our house. I paid for a new refrigerator, stove, washer, and dryer when ours died. I paid to have our in shambles bathroom repaired. It's to the point that my parents have offered to put my name on the house as well. I stay with my family because I don't need to be on my own. And I love my family and don't want to see them struggle financially if I can help it. It just makes sense for us to stay together for now. But yeah, what a freaking freeloader I am. You don't live with your parents. Your parents live with you. I had an older customer at my restaurant tell me that millennials were ruining customer service. Because we're so laid back we don't complain enough and pretty soon the customer is always right won't mean anything anymore. So, what you're saying is that entitled baby boomer snowflakes are dying out and being replaced with chill customers? I'm failing to see the problem here, Linda. OMG, I've been complaining about that customer is always right comment for years. People abuse that crap way too much. I do agree with you. I hardly ever complain. People make mistakes. No biggie. Just fix the problem and don't be a dong. My grandma though, she'll cut you out in a second. Always calling the 800 number or demanding to talk to a manager. Blows my mind. When I was in college, like 2-3 years ago, we had an alumni come in that worked in sales for Fox. He started talking about how Fox has been struggling mightily to attract millennial viewers and that they're completely stumped on how to get us to watch them. Not 5 minutes later, he starts talking about how Fox has specialized workshops to teach employees how to work with millennials in the office because we're lazy and stupid and how we're the first generation that just doesn't want to work. Typical eye-rolling crap. So yeah, I have no idea why Fox isn't attracting millennial viewers. Couldn't possibly be that they think so little of us that they think they need specialized trainers to work with us or anything. It's not we don't want to do work. It's we don't want to be abused employees always expecting to outperform one another and say yes to everything in an environment where you are constantly told you are expendable. You gotta work to live, but I'm not about living to work. A co-worker from a different department resigned, and a group of managers was trashing the decision. That generation has no loyalty, just a bunch of lazy millennials. I spoke up and said I was part of that generation. I was in fact a bit younger, and that it was kind of dumb to make generalizations based on age alone. One said something about how the former employee had seniority over me, so it was probably a matter of time for me. I pointed out that I had more seniority than the employee and that manager combined. She didn't believe me but asked the director later to confirm. She hopped jobs every 3 years and actually was working there when I first started and left for 8 years, yet blamed age and perceived laziness, and didn't want to be challenged on her mindset. I think the idea of company loyalty is absurd and outdated anyway. I'm sure there are some exceptions, but more often than not the company or organization doesn't give two licks about you. On a family vacation, while my siblings and I were making an observation on a dog in the back of a truck, my dad snapped and told us that millennials think that they can comment on everything and they need to learn to shut their traps. My siblings are Gen Z. I barely count as a millennial. Sounds like he's projecting his crappy childhood. They can talk about their struggles, but we're not allowed to talk about ours. Might not be the most stupid, but the most annoying to me is the problem with your generation is you're all whiny snowflakes who are too worried about feelings. This is always made by a boomer in a long, emotionally driven rant overloaded with projection. The irony is lost on them. That we don't want to work. Are you kidding me? First of all, we want to work, but it's hard to work when you need to and paid internships to even get your foot in the door. Also that we don't want to buy houses. Many millennials grew up during the housing crisis. Houses aren't a great investment. They mean taking more loans, and the average salary of a 30-year-old hasn't increased in 30 years, while everything else has. It's not as if no one can buy homes. A few of my friends do, but it's not a matter of not wanting something. Literal conversation I had with a friend once. I don't understand. If school is so expensive, why don't you get a job that will help you pay for it? Everyone's hiring. Yes, Carol. They're hiring at minimum wage 20 hours a week. That doesn't cover rent, let alone an education. Don't forget about the expectation of 24/7 availability for a 20 per hour week job. My old boss had 3 sons my age, early mid-20s at the time, who didn't go to college and just worked part-time jobs and fricked around all day on their parents' dime. She attributed that to the millennial generation. She went on one day about how millennials just can't get out of bed and do work. They are opposed to do anything but play video games all day and get drunk at night with their friends. I said, well, some maybe, but everyone I know is working full-time on a career track. She lost it, made some vague threats about me being useless and how I should be thankful to have this job based on my abilities. 20 minutes later I was showing her how to copy and paste documents onto a flash drive for the 10th time. They call you disrespectful when you won't let them disrespect you. I am personally a fan of the complaints about millennials being too incompetent to get a job, especially when it's coming from a person who has stubbornly held onto a position well past retirement age with an irrelevant, outdated skill set that would not get them hired if they were searching now. How long am I going to have to contend with superiors who can't figure out Microsoft Office? I think the worst one was a post where an older lady was saying that we were so impolite to say no problem when someone says thank you, instead of saying you're welcome. Let's meet halfway and start saying your problem. I am a student dentist. Had a baby boomer patient say that my generation of doctors relied too heavily on technology. This was in response to me looking up their medication on my iPad. You're right. We'll just put away this local anesthetic. Millennials are somehow both too sensitive and overexposed to lewd and or violent movies, shows, video games. Too sensitive in some things and overly desensitized in others. Avocado toast is the reason we aren't buying houses. Maybe it's because student loans are already as expensive as a mortgage. I wish I was in a position in life where something as small as food under $6, much cheaper if homemade, was what's keeping me from buying an entire house. Millennials are too obsessed with phones. They're pocket devices that allow me to keep in contact with friends and access any information in the world. Frick yeah, I'm going to use my phone. My own mother went on a dinner date last week, took a picture of a couple my age on their phone during their date, and posted their picture on Facebook laughing at millennials. I told her that maybe they simply enjoy each other's company, and the fact that they're sitting together is nice enough without taking pictures of other couples on a date and insulting them. At family gatherings, all my baby boomer aunts and uncles are staring at their phones too. Probably the one that gets me the most is your generation is killing the chain restaurant business. Oh, you mean we support small businesses and found somewhere better to spend a Friday night than at Applebee's or Chili's paying for overpriced food? Or you've got it so easy, everything you want is right at your fingertips with that cell phone, when in reality it's so much more dangerous to have a phone on top of everything you could unwillingly see or find on the internet. Just one social media post could absolutely ruin your reputation, career, family, etc. We are under the microscope like no other generation before us. I'll trade places with baby boomers and go to college for basically free and own a home before the age of 21 any day. You have been visited by the paparazzi dog. Comment the perfect framing so that a paparazzi never pursues you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.